So I don't think a video like this has ever been done before. I mean, sure, there have been a couple of rankings of U.S. senators from different states, obviously, but I don't think from one specific state. So what I wanted to do was make a video on the best and worst U.S. senators from my home state of Connecticut. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. Just a couple of ground rules before we get into the list. I will not be included Richard Blumenthal and Chris Murphy, who are our current senators. I mean, because let's be honest, we're all a little biased towards them. And also, I'm going to try to include as best I can. I'm going to try to stick to what they did do as senator, but I also might talk about like what they did outside of the office as well. But without any further ado, let's get right into the list, starting at the 5th worst, Orville H. Platt. Orville Platt he was a good guy. He was a good senator. He was very hostile to the labor movement. He opposed the Sherman Antitrust Act. He opposed an 8-hour workday law. And not only that, but he is the namesake for the Platt Amendment, which was passed in 1901 after the Spanish-American War, which basically established it basically laid out U.S. relations with Cuba for 3 decades, and it established the U.S. way above it. So it's basically just a sign of imperialism. So, yeah, that's why he's on the list. And the 5th best is Roger Sherman Baldwin. A lot of you, especially if you're from Connecticut, should probably know him as one of the people who defended the Amistad slaves in the U.S. versus the Amistad Supreme Court case. And he is on that list. That alone lands him on the list. He helped free the Amistad slaves. And not only that, but in the Senate, he did great work too. He opposed the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850. And this is something that got him kicked out of. This is one of the reasons he lost re-election. He was sacrificing his political career to do what he thought was right. And in hindsight, it's easy to say that the bar was so low back then because you're not tolerating slavery is the bar to being a good senator. I know how low the bar is, but we have to consider historical relativism and everything. Alright, and the 4th worst is George P. McLean. He voted for the Espionage and Sedition Acts and against the 19th Amendment. What more can I say? If you voted for those acts, if you voted for those bills, you don't care about the First Amendment, because those were meant to silence World War I opponents. Now, for the sake of my argument, I want to point out Frank Brandegee. I hope I'm pronouncing that name right, who served in the Senate alongside McLean. He also had a lot of the same problems McLean did. He voted for this Espionage Act, and he voted against the 19th Amendment. The reason that McLean, it could have been a tie between the two, but the reason that McLean edges him out is because at least Brandegee voted against the Sedition Act, which was arguably worse, because that basically silenced any criticism of the war, and now, of course, the Espionage Act has been used to just completely go after whistleblowers who are exposing the truth about our government. We're seeing that with, Edward Snowden and Chelsea Manning. Thankfully, she was commuted. Her sentence was commuted, but that is just really... So the fact that you voted for those bills definitely does earn you a place on this list. And the 4th best is James Hillhouse. He was one of the first U.S. senators from Connecticut. He was a devout abolitionist. In fact, he was one of the anti-slavery leaders in the Senate of his time. He pushed against the expansion of slavery into the Louisiana Territory after the Louisiana Purchase, and he actually did. He served on a committee to investigate the ending of the slave trade, and a couple of his amendments restricting slavery passed Congress and were signed into law. And although the most tough restrictions did not pass, his role in his effort is definitely worth recognition, and this is according to historian Dan Fehrenbacher. Sorry about the background noise, I'm in a college dorm right now, and I don't really feel like editing that out. They are the strongest anti-slavery restrictions imposed on any portion of the Deep South between 1735 and 1865. So yeah, he's definitely worth admiration for his dedicated opposition to slavery. I'm sorry about that, guys. But he definitely deserves credit for that. And that's why he lands on this list. And the 3rd worst is Isaac Tootsie. He was a doughface. I could just stop right there, but I'll go further into detail. No, he served in the Senate at a time when the country was just gearing towards getting ready for the Civil War. So a doughface, for those of you who don't know, it's a northerner with southern sympathies. So obviously Connecticut's a northeastern state, but he was, I mean, as far as northern senators go, pretty pro-union. I mean, he supported states' rights, and when he was after his time in the Senate, he was Secretary of the Navy, I think it was, under President Buchanan, who infamously did nothing to prevent the Civil War from happening, and he just kind of went along with that. And so he really was just out of touch with Connecticut, really on the wrong side of history. So that's why he's pretty high on the worst list. And the third best is Lowell Weicker. Lowell Weicker, he was good. He was a good senator, what can I say? There's a lot to like about him, and he actually kind of pleasantly surprised me. Mostly because he's a Republican. But within the last 50 years, no less. He's a Republican senator in the last 50 years. The fact that he made this list is kind of shocking, but no, there's a lot to like about him. He was a big advocate for disability rights, and although he was out of the Senate before the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed into law, his support of disability rights definitely influenced that. He also bucked his party. He bucked President Reagan on issues of separation of church and state and civil rights. He voted for the Civil Rights Restoration Act, which Reagan vetoed. And he also bucked Nixon. He voted for the War Powers Resolution. He also was the first Republican U.S. Senator to call for Nixon to resign after the Watergate scandal. And that's significant because at the time, most nutmeggers, or people in Connecticut are called, supported Nixon. So for him to buck what was popular at the time to do what he thought was right, that's courage that's lacking in Washington today. And it continues, because afterwards he went on to become governor of Connecticut. And he did some things that I disagree with when he was governor, but again, he wasn't doing what was popular, he did what he thought was right, and honestly, with how much that's lacking today, he definitely earned a spot on the list. And also, important to note, he was elected governor of Connecticut as a third-party candidate. That's incredibly rare for a third-party governor to be elected, and so that alone gives major respect for me. Alright, here we are. The second worst, Joe Lieberman. I know, I'm just as surprised as you are. I thought for sure he was going to be number one when I started making this list. And although he's number two, it's not because I had a change of heart. It's not because I thought, yeah, he did a bunch of bad stuff, but I don't know, there was some good stuff in there. No, like, it just means that there was a worse senator than him, if that's even possible. And it's not hard to understand why people hate him. It's not to understand why barely anyone in Connecticut wanted him to get reelected when he decided to retire in 2012. It's because he was one of the biggest cheerleaders for the Iraq War. One of the worst foreign policy decisions in American history, if not the worst, at least in the last couple of decades. By far the worst, are you kidding me? And he was one of the cheerleaders of it. It was like him and John McCain and Lindsey Graham were like the three amigos, like the most hawkish senators in the country. And not only that, he endorsed John McCain in 2008 over Obama. Now, say what you want to about Obama, but against McCain? Are you kidding me? You choose McCain over Obama. Wow. Tells me a lot about you. And also, there's just a traditional run-of-the-mill bad stuff, like he supported the Iraq War, he supported the Patriot Act, which just completely obliterated your civil liberties. He supported the Defense of Marriage Act, which was extremely homophobic and discriminated against gay couples. He also was instrumental in creating the Department of Homeland Security. And not only, going back to the Iraq War, he still defends it, and he says that it was good for the world. What? You think it was good for the world? And he says, well, minus Iraq. That's like the whole reason it wasn't good for the world. You can't just give yourself that kind of out right there, Joe Lieberman. You can't just do that. You have to own up to what you did, and you are not doing that. You are defending what you did because you are an imperialist war hawk, and you do not deserve sympathy. You are a disgrace to the state of Connecticut, and the fact that you did not make this number one on this list is not an indictment of how much you've grown on me. It's an indictment of how bad Connecticut politics really is. Should have saved my energy for number one, because with that rank, you would have thought he was number one. Believe me, I thought he would be too. But anyway, we'll get to number one worst in a minute. Believe me, I have things to say. But first, we got to get to the second best, Oliver Ellsworth, a founding father, the architect of the Connecticut Compromise, probably one of the most well-known senators from Connecticut, and for good reason. He did a lot of great things. And this is one of the senators where he's kind of, I give him credit for more what he did outside of the Senate. But when he was in the Senate, he did some good things. He sponsored the Bill of Rights. He was responsible for the Senate approving of the Bill of Rights. enough said. I could just like end right there. But not only that, but he also encouraged President Washington to go to France and to negotiate the Jay Treaty to avoid war with. Actually, I think it was war with Britain. Excuse me, I could be wrong. I'll put my sources in the description below. You guys can correct me on that. And only that, but like then he was appointed as Chief Justice of the Supreme Court by George Washington, and later he was sent by John Adams to negotiate with Napoleon to avoid war with France. So he was in not only that, but during the Constitutional Convention, he consistently spoke out against slavery, which I know, again, it's definitely a low bar in hindsight, but back then, giving the historical context of everything, I think it's worth giving credit for. And, yeah, he was just a great guy. He really set the bar high for other people in Connecticut. Alright, here we are at the top of the list. Now, again, I really thought Joe Lieberman was going to be the worst. And again, it doesn't mean my opinion on him is improved. It just means that there was a worse senator, somehow. If this is an election, consider the difference between Lieberman and who is number one on the worst list. Consider the difference to be less than a point. Hell, maybe even less than a half point. I don't know, it's really close, but without any further ado, the number one worst U.S. senator in Connecticut history is Thomas J. Dodd. Yeah. Tommy, I don't know how you did it, but you managed to be worse than Joe Lieberman. Like, seriously, like, how do you even do that? Okay, I'll stop now. Now, some of you guys, especially from Connecticut, you may know him because he was a prosecutor in the Nuremberg trials. He prosecuted Nazi war criminals. Does he deserve credit for that? Yes. But that wasn't when he was a senator. And I know I've been doing this whole time giving people credit for, like, when they weren't in the Senate. But look at when he was in the Senate. The list of his problems is endless. Okay, so first and foremost, he's one of the reasons we have the war on drugs today. He pushed for the criminalization of LSD, and that was a defining moment in the lead up to the war on drugs. So, yeah, this sounds like strike one, you're out right there. But he'd make the list based on that alone. But why do you need top in the list? Oh, don't worry, we're getting that. There's some run-of-the-mill bad stuff. You know, he was censured by the Senate because he used campaign contributions for personal use, like to buy booze and stuff like that. And, yeah, that's just absolutely lovely. Oh, but his corruption doesn't end there. He lobbied, before being elected to Congress, he lobbied on behalf of a far-right Guatemalan dictator, and then used his power to secure $15 million in U.S. aid to Guatemala. And he was proud of that. He didn't even try to hide just how proud he was about that. You know what, maybe, hey, give him a little credit. At least he's not trying to hide his corruption, but still. Oh, but he thought that was bad. He tried to get Martin Luther King Jr. arrested. Why? Because he opposed the Vietnam War. Say whatever you want to about Joe Lieberman. At least he didn't want to silence opposition to the Iraq War. Now, he deserves all the crap in the world he gets for pushing it, no doubt. But Thomas J. Dodd supported the Vietnam War. I mean, there's no other way to explain it. Like, if you're trying to arrest people for opposing the Vietnam War, you are supporting a war where we did endless amounts of crimes, where we just completely invaded a country because we were afraid, communism was gonna take over, like, the Midwest? Like, what? Really? Like, that's what we did this for? And we were committing war crime after war crime after war crime when we were in Vietnam, bombing innocent civilians, and just completely setting the stage. You can say a lot of things set the stage for modern-day American imperialism, but if this didn't have an influence on it, I don't know what did. You're trying to silence opposition to that. You hate the First Amendment. There is no way around it. You hate the First Amendment if that's what you're doing. If you are silencing opposition to one of, if not the worst war we've ever been in American history, you do not deserve to be celebrated. You deserve to be publicly shamed. And you do not deserve to be the namesake of several buildings in Connecticut. And you do not deserve to have a prize named after you for what? International justice and human rights. You do not care about human rights. You do not care about human rights, Thomas J. Dodd. You do not care about human rights if you're trying to silence people who are opposing an illegal and offensive war. You are not supportive of human rights and international justice when you were one of the preludes to the war on drugs. You do not deserve the recognition you've gotten. And that's another reason he tops Lieberman. People know Lieberman sucks. Even people in Connecticut will tell you that. Even a lot of Democrats will tell you that. Thomas J. Dodd is celebrated like he's some kind of hero. He's not a hero. He hated free speech. He loved offensive wars. He loved being corrupt and rubbing his corruption in your face. He loved all of that. And he is a big disgrace to Connecticut and America. He is by far the worst senator in Connecticut history. Okay, maybe not by far, because Lieberman's still pretty bad, but he's worse. He is. Whew. Well, man, that sucked. But that was satisfying to talk about, I'm not gonna lie. Well, that was heavy. I know I got a little serious there, but I'm not gonna apologize, because he deserves to be called out for what he did to him, not only to Connecticut, but to America. Alright. Whew. I kind of want to end the video now. I don't know how I'm going to top that. But I'm going to try. Alright. Now on to the number one best. It's going to be a much more enjoyable. Number one best senator in Connecticut, Abraham Ribicoff. Yeah. Abraham Ribicoff. Abraham Ribicoff, man, like this is a dude that I swear a lot of leftist history geeks, you guys are sleeping on him. Like, I swear, seriously, this guy was great. This guy was amazing. There's not enough nice things I can say about him. He supported LBJ's Great Society program. But when LBJ supported the Vietnam War, he actively spoke out against it. And not only that, perhaps he's most famous for is his 1968 speech at the Democratic National Convention where he nominated George McGovern. That's pretty base of you, Abe. It really is. And he confronted then Chicago Mayor Richard Daley for using Gestapo tactics with the confrontations that protesters were having with Chicago police. He called him out right to his face about that. And that was pretty badass, let's not lie. I'll put a link to his speech down below. Definitely check it out. It's amazing. And he worked with Ralph Nader on the Motor Vehicle Highway Safety Act, which created the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, and he created new safety standards for cars. He also, when he was in the Senate, he was also like the prime sponsor of bills to create the Departments of Education and Energy, and he also sponsored the ethics reforms for government after the Watergate scandal when trust in government was at an all-time low. Something's never changed. And before he was elected to the Senate, he was governor of Connecticut. He was a great governor. He had great leadership after the 1955 floods in Connecticut. He also pushed to increase spending on schools and welfare programs. And he also, when he was Secretary of Health, Education, and Welfare, between his time as governor and his time in the Senate, he pushed for Medicare. And, of course, he would end up voting for Medicare and Medicaid when he came to the Senate. So, overall, Abraham Ribicoff, you're a good man. And you're the best senator Connecticut has ever had. And I swear, a lot of you guys are sleeping on him. Alright, well, that's my list. Top 5 best and worst U.S. senators in Connecticut history. What did you guys think about this? Do you like this idea? Maybe make a video. Maybe, like, if you want to, tell me your favorite and least favorite senators from your home state. But that's all from me. Thank you guys for watching. I'm sorry I haven't been posting lately. This week has been crazy. I've had a lot of work to get out of the way for school, but it's winding down. Semester's almost over, so I'm gonna try and get back to making some more videos for y'all. But so make sure you subscribe, like, comment, follow me on social media down below, do all that good stuff. Click over here to check out my last 2 videos. And I'll catch y'all later. Take care.